Hey everybody, welcome back to Not Another Tooling podcast with myself, Austin Pearson, and my co-host, Mr. Matt Malcolm. Matt, how are you today?
I'm good, man. The weather's picking up, so there's a bit of a new vibe taking place. More importantly, I mean, not that you probably want to see it, but I've got flip-flops rocking now, so that's me sorted for the next few months.
I must admit I'm the same, but I always wear flip-flops year round. Don't know what it is, like having bare feet, but there we go. And we have got this week a very special guest with us, Mr. Dan Burely. Welcome, Dan.
Thank you very much, Austin. I won't say very special, but yeah, especially in my own ways, as my mum would say, yes.
And Dan, I've just discovered as we were talking, lives probably 10 miles from me, in close to Wigan. A beautiful little place.
Some of you guys have to.
I've never heard Lee called a beautiful old place, Austin. So thank you. Yes.
I do. Well, I play guitar in my spare time, and so I've played a few gigs around Wigan, and it's always a good night, for sure.
I do like it up north. I'm going to a LinkedIn social event I think it's in Leeds somewhere next month. So I always enjoy going up north. I mean, I'm sort of middle of the country and I'm more north than Londoners, but I like going that bit further.
It always makes me laugh. Yeah, I'm going up north in Leeds, and you're like, it's flipping miles away.
Yeah.
Everything is just up north. Anyway, today we are talking about unlocking value in the Microsoft tech stack. Today, Dan is an expert in this area. So, Dan, how did you end up where you are today, an expert in the Microsoft world? What has your journey been like?
So I'll start from school. Give you a brief update. I went from school into the military for 9 years. Well, just shy of 9 years, and then I did a bit of IT for the last 4 years of my military service, just like Matt. Surprised we never crossed paths, but we both did the same job, it turns out. And then I
God's trade, Dan. That's what it is.
Sorry,
God's trade.
God's trade.
So I got told.
That's what you got told, yeah. I'm not saying I retraded, but yeah. And then I went into first line because I thought I knew commercial tech, but I really did not know commercial tech. I thought I knew IT, but I really didn't. So I had to start at the bottom. Went to first line, worked in the managed service industry, and that's where I found my love for Microsoft. That sounds so sad, my love for Microsoft, really. But it's true. I worked through the managed service industry, worked my way up, working for a small managed services company. So he's probably still my mentor, the guy who employed me there, a guy called Ronnie. And then I worked for a large managed services company, and then I went internal. Worked my way up to head of IT, worked at IT director level, and recently took a settlement to leave because I built a tech department that really didn't need me for the next 10 months. And so I set up DSB Tech Consultancy. So what DSB is a fractional tech leadership company. So I specialise in going to businesses that can't afford an IT director. They can't afford not so much that they can't afford one. They don't need a full-time IT director. They don't need a full-time CTO. And I go in and I look at the tech stack. I look at the tech team, and I try and I try and ensure it's running optimal. And you haven't just got tools there that aren't needed. You're not duplicating systems and things like that. Getting bang for your buck, as I would say, as a northerner. Get bang for buck. That's probably the best way to say it.
Absolutely. Were you? Did I see you were at IT Lab for a bit, or JMC? Was it?
I was at JMC for about two years, something like that.
With Marie Buckley and Steve Pallett and.
Yeah, so Marie was the service desk team leader. Steve Buckley was head of technology, I think, at the time. I think he was. Yeah, but yeah. I spent two and a half years at IT Lab, I think it was.
Oh, super! I know the team there very, very well. Done a lot of business with them, and they have a lot of expertise in this Microsoft space as well.
They've grown ridiculously large since the JMC days and the IT Lab. Then I left at IT Lab. Then went to Content Cloud. I think it was then, and now they're huge now. They do have a great tech team there, a really good tech team. I'd be lying if I didn't say I learned most of my trade from some of the team there.
Ah, amazing, really good. Okay, so let's kick off then. In a lot of the customers, organisations that we tend to talk with, we often have this discussion about enterprise tooling or diving into vendor specific stacks, right? So you're running stuff in Azure, Office 365 or whatever. Surely we should be looking at Azure Monitor and App Insights and whatever, rather than going for a big, a big enterprise class tool or whatever. I think there's room for both personally, but I'd be really interested in your view of when do you think the right situation is? Is there room for both of them to coexist? How do you approach that with clients?
It all depends on your IT architecture and what your infrastructure is built on. So yes, there's 100% room for both. AWS and Microsoft can coexist for the better. If you have websites and apps and things like that, as much as I love Microsoft, I'm not going to tell you to put it into Azure. It sits better in AWS. But then there's the burning thing of when you start looking at data storage and you've got with Redshift and so on, it is shifting over to Microsoft now. It is shifting that way because it is a one-stop shop for everything. But yeah, before I start waffling, to answer your question, there is room for both, 100%. I'm not going to sit here and say Microsoft Stack is 100% the way forward. There is definitely room for both.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. And I think most customers are at that stage, right? They're using multiple clouds, I guess. When you get into the tooling piece, then so you've got Microsoft, you've probably still got some on-prem stuff or whatever it is. And you're looking at how do I manage this? What tools do I need to manage my Microsoft environment and maybe some other stuff? Clearly, there is a bunch of stuff that comes with the Microsoft world: Azure Monitor, Azure App Insights, all of that type of stuff. How do you see customers using those types of technologies, or do you say actually go a different way, have something that works with everything, or do you need something that Azure specific to get into the details of how your applications and services are performed in Azure?
It all depends on where your architecture sits and what you're running on it, really. Because if you're running in Azure architecture, I would say to put Azure monitoring services in, yes. Then I'm not going to turn to you and say don't put the likes of Cloudflare and things like that, because they're the products that they specialize in that area. So, to advise on what question you're asking about, I would have to know more about the apps that you're running and more about the architecture you're running.
Is there also like a transitional thing there as well? Because I suppose the small SMB situation, they'll have a set of activities and maybe there's like a roadmap type maturity where the Duo will go all in the Microsoft stack and then eventually they move out. Is there a logical thought process to go, this is a maturity path, or do you find some customers just go all in and only ever stay with the Microsoft stack for certain things?
Well, it's all about exploiting what Microsoft can offer, within your licensing stack. So when you start a business, you either leverage Microsoft or Google, or for your IAM platform and your mail platform, yeah. So it's all about when you leverage that stack and what stack you use, and you're exploiting the tools that are available to you. So let's say you're a startup business, yeah. Let's say you start up business and you have 10 users. It makes sense for me to go to Microsoft and use business standard, let's say, because you get the Entra, you get the IAM, you get the Defender, you get your mail monitoring, you get your apps, you get your Power Apps, so you get your Teams. So at this point, you get your phone system. So you're replacing, let's say, with just Teams alone, you can implement a phone system. You can replace Slack. You can replace Zoom, workforce management, desk booking systems, just within one application. So that's where my strong suit sits. That was a tongue.
Got it at the end, didn't it?
Yeah, that was where my strong suit sits. Is looking at the tools that Microsoft offer within the M365 suite, and looking at the tools that a business has got, like let's say a phone system, you're using 8x8, which costs an absolute fortune. Why can't we put that into Teams and reduce your costs? Why are we utilizing Slack? Yes, devs love Slack, and it's a great tool. It's got great third-party integrations. But why are we not using Teams? Why are we not utilizing the integrations that it's got? You know, with the Microsoft apps that you use day in, day out. Why are we paying for Zoom when we've got Teams? Like now we're on StreamYard. Why are we not utilizing Teams Live within our licensing stack?
I'll tell you why, because we tried it and it didn't, Jacking.
But these are the questions that I ask businesses, and it's all about weighing up the cost versus like what the tool does. Are you utilizing all the features that? If we look at IAM, for example, I know I'm going off away from Teams now. If you look at IAM, we've got Okta, and you've got obviously Entra. They're the two big players. Okta will do far more than Entra will. Yeah, it will onboard you. It will do all the onboarding. It will do all the identity, all the ID management, and completely onboard your employee. But does a business really need that? That's the question I ask a business: is when you're looking at your tools, do you really need all of the features that it's offering, or can you just look at the Microsoft stack and take what Microsoft offers because you're already paying for it?
Yeah,
that's when I go into a business, and that's the questions I ask them. And I look at the tools that they've got. Are you utilizing all the features? If you're not, well, let's reduce that, and can we utilize something that you're already paying for?
It's a really good point, that, and a point that we come back to time and time again. I think, right, is what do you need to do as a business, and having the right tools to help you get to the outcomes that you need. And yeah, there's all these fancy tools out there, and they've got all of this blah 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 blah. But in reality, you need the tools that are going to help me move your business forward.
And
not
when you get people joining the business, they often turn to I need this and I need that, just because they've utilized it in a previous business. But is it right for that business? The business is operating correct, perfectly fine, and then you'll get a senior person come in and they'll say, "I want to implement this." It's my job to turn and say, "Well, why? What features does that tool offer?" That's Microsoft, because 90% of businesses are already utilizing Microsoft, for as their architecture, for their emails and their data storage and their access management. They're embedded, and they've been embedded for that long. They're never going to get weaned out by Google. They're not. As much as one person that might end up watching this will argue the point with me that Google's better, but we have that conversation weekly. When you're paying for Microsoft, when you're paying for 365, you need to be looking at all of its offerings, which are constantly changing. I sent Matt a spreadsheet of what each license offers not long ago, didn't I, Matt? And Matt was shocked of what you actually get offered within your tooling sets. Look at what you're paying for, leverage it, and if you need something extra, then buy it.
So Dan, I suppose we've got two scenarios, haven't we? We've got a scenario where it's I don't want to say new company, but like it's an organization that is evolved into using the Microsoft stack, and they're then at the point where they make a decision to go, oh, I need this feature, and then they can look internal to the Microsoft stack or go out. So that's one scenario. So that's more like the expansion and the bolting on of extra stuff. And then the other scenario, which is probably more historically in Austin and I space, is these organizations that have already sunk the massive cost in these other things that are surrounded it. So it becomes more of a consolidation exercise. Like when you're having those conversations, firstly, what's the most common conversation that you're having? Is it the growing into and maturing and expanding, or is it I need to consolidate my stuff and save some cash?
So the most common one that I have is antivirus and email insecurity. That's it. Antivirus and security. So you're paying for like the likes of Defender when you've already got Microsoft. When you've got Defender Plan 1 or Defender Plan 2, and you're paying for a third-party suite. Email filtering. And data protection, so data leakage DLP. People are paying for tools to protect the data when you can just write simple conditional access policies that are out the box by Microsoft to protect your data. So it's all about that. They're the often conversations that I come to. But going back to what you just said, about enterprises that have invested into tools, for years and years and years.
Yeah.
They're an ongoing cost that if you can consolidate, you don't have to swallow. It's a nice to have.
Yeah, no,
If you
makes
need
sense.
it, great, continue it. But if it's a nice to have, it's a cost that you've got to swallow, and tech's got to. It's part of the tech budget, and businesses see tech as an expenditure, and a lot of business. How hard is it to explain to a CFO why you need money, why a tech team needs money? So if you can consolidate it, that's my aim, is to try and reduce footprint, reduce security risks, and reduce points of failure. That's it really, and try and, like I say, it sounds like I'm just shoving Microsoft here down everybody's throat, but it's not.
But I suppose that's the topic, isn't it? I suppose. Well, maybe going a little bit further than that then. So the exploitation, I think, realistically, for the kind of people that like listen and watch the playbacks of this, the exploitation and saving cash by being slimmer in their estate is probably the more logical high volume use case, I would imagine. So maybe just throw some scenarios at us where, like, I guess it doesn't matter if you name tools, but like where organizations have had certain things, and actually, you mentioned a couple already, where this is the approach for these reasons, and like what's like good return investment. Because I suppose even if you tip up to any CIO, CFO even as well, and say these are the things that we should be doing, it's like, I've got priorities, man. I've got too many things going on. So like if you're going big bang, if you just did the top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 use cases, you'll see a drastic difference in your ROI.
So the biggest thing for me straight away is data. So that's your, it's not a cost to a business, but it is a cost if the ICO get involved and you have a data leakage. That's it. So let's protect your data. So people utilize tools for data leakage prevention, to protect themselves. If you've got frontline workers and you've got people that are happy to use web app, then just restrict your data so it can't be moved as for web app. It can't be downloaded to a device, whether it be a company device. That is an out-the-box feature within the conditional access policy that you can turn on with Microsoft. It is, and it's at zero cost. So people are putting their business at risk with data leakage when it is literally a simple flick of a switch. You can't download data over web. Yes, there is a user education part of it. 100% there is, but it's a feature that's there. And security is the biggest thing for me. It is out of Microsoft. And then, so you got people, and I speak to MSP still to this day, that they're selling Bitdefender, on top of M365.
Yeah.
Selling it on top of Business Premium, which comes with Defender for Business. Well, Bitdefender Defender for Business will do everything that Bitdefender does. So you are duplicating costs, and Bitdefender costs as a minimum £5 per user per month. If you've got 300 users, that's a huge expenditure that a business doesn't need to spend. Mimecast again. Mimecast is great at what it does. It is good at what it does. Defender for Cloud, Defender for Office 365 never used to do it, but now it does, which is included within your business suite. So the issue that you've got is Microsoft are forever changing their product suite, and they're forever changing the features within the product suite. So, like I said, I referred to that spreadsheet that I told you a moment ago. You've got to look back at it all the time. You've got to keep your eye on the updated spreadsheet, to know what features your license is getting, and licensing stacking to get the right features out to the right licenses, as we've discussed offline, Matt. Licensing stacking, the right features, to get you the right tools for your job. If we move away from security, I know one thing that you wanted to look at was Power Automate.
Yep.
So Power Automate, let's say versus Zapier. Zapier, fantastic tool. It's got thousands and thousands of plugins, but do you need them thousands and thousands of plugins? Do you need them all, or can you utilize the workflows that are already built in Power Automate? Again, it's a topic that we've discussed. So I can sit here and I can throw comparisons, but I'd like to hear questions either from yourselves or anybody who's on board to how I can potentially look at helping them with their enterprise tooling, which for you guys it might be different, but for me, my enterprise tooling is what the business runs on bread and butter. So it is their business function. So it is their M365, which is the Teams. I'm not going to go into your Word and all that. So it's your SharePoint. Why are people still using Dropbox and Box when you've got SharePoint?
One thing I started using the other week was we're just doing some tracking activity at the moment, and we was just going to throw up a really basic Microsoft planner board together. And then for the use case I needed it for, I actually started looking at the Lists app, which I never looked at before, to be honest. then understanding what could be done with this versus not. That was okay, cool, extra, all in context. So there's definitely loads of areas to like exploit, but maybe just going back then on the scenario where you've got this organization that's taking like a left or right turn and they're consolidating to get more, whatever it might be. But when us and I typically coming from an enterprise tooling perspective, and these things would be, you know, big mammoth solutions and some small ones and stuff.
Yeah.
There's always this consideration for like, yeah, you've got your upfront investment, and the conversation we're having now is ultimately to mitigate that investment. Then you've got the time to get it deployed. So maybe we can talk a bit about like the ramp up time, because some of the tools that Austin and I deal with just take a lot of time for various reasons. And then maybe at the other end of that, then, which everyone should be bothered about, but not always, is the actual like feeding and watering, the long-term cost. So we're talking like the total cost of ownership all in all. So maybe just go through those stages. We've done the first one, I suppose, talking about the consolidation, maybe the middle one getting ramped up and stuff.
So implementation then. If you're using a third-party tool, is the expenditure is the installation and the actual tech cost. 90% of businesses have already got a Microsoft team built into the businesses, or they've got a managed service provider behind them, so they've got the structure there already, to implement these tools. And then when you exit it, you've got the support. You're paying a third party for support again when you've already got these teams built in. But in these cases, you have to have a comparison. You have to have a comparison. But it's one thing I will talk about is we were talking about Planner a moment ago. Yeah. So a lot of businesses now are feeding into the OKR model, the KPI and the OKR model. Yeah. And they'll use things like Lattice, which is that is an enterprise tool, within that space. So when you look at Viva, for example, Viva Goals and so on, Viva Goals, that feeds into Planner, which feeds into OKRs and KPIs based on project boards.
Yeah.
With a single tool, rather than your Lattice. So there is comparisons that we can talk about, in the enterprise space, away from like your typical teams, SharePoint, project management, and so on. So it's just, for me, it's being asked the questions, and I'll try and give you comparison. What I will say is, I'm not against enterprise tools at all. I know it might sound it, but I'm not. If a tool is there to do a job, but if you're already paying for a product, then my argument is, then you're already paying for something. Why pay for something else? And it's something that I've said a couple of times now, and that's something that I'm very passionate about.
Well, I did have one scenario with a customer a couple of years ago now where there was a decision point to create a new functionality. Ultimately, it was a variation of some user portal to submit tickets, basically what it was. And then there was a very costly exercise to continue to expand with their current ITSM investment, which was an expensive product. So actually, there was almost like a splinter cell project just to spin up a custom Power App to serve the needs and have some like bi-directional integration in place there. And that was genuinely like a more legitimate and realistically more sustainable than what their current commitment was. So like there's that decision then, and we've had this conversation before, Austin and I, on the previous session where we talk about like the notion of buy versus build. Yeah, if we've got the functionality available in the Microsoft stack, okay, all good. But then, if you've not got it, actually the Microsoft stack still offers a massive opportunity to like put the things on top and to build it. So maybe a buy versus build sort of scenario, any of those you've come across?
Yeah, so Power Apps is a fantastic tool. So let's say, for example, we built one of my team who I used to work with. We built an app that would. So we had an issue with taking photos. We never actually got to implement it, but we built it and tested it, and it worked. We had an issue taking photos of clients. Yep, and what they were doing is they were storing them on the personal phones. So we built a Power App which would take the photo, it would not store it on the personal device, and it would put that straight into OneDrive or SharePoint. What I wanted to do at that point is I wanted to use Microsoft Face, the AI services, to then do facial recognition and implement that into our third-party app, for the client. So that is a buy versus build at that point. So you can buy tools to do it, but Power App was a fantastic tool. But I put in a camera in there, which took the photo and exported it straight away, to SharePoint without storing it on a local drive. So you're protecting your data, you're protecting the BYOD, and you're protecting your client. But when you refer back to the ITSM, as you know, I'm very passionate about ITSM as well. I would not build a service desk in Power Apps.
No. I mean that particular use case was really finite, and it was a really basic portal. I mean, don't get me wrong, if they could have continued to leverage the existing ITSM tool for it, which was the initial path, that would have happened. But it was an absolutely ridiculous expense, and it just didn't make it. Ultimately, that customer ended up moving away from that particular vendor, and that was probably one of the trigger mechanisms that started it. But it was another avenue to have a bit of a light way. But let's say we've pursued this path then, so we've understood, like, we've given option to slim down, we build something or we don't, we leverage something. I suppose what generally hangs up and why we find a lot of products with a lot of feature on the shelf is then the running of it, the continuing to expand on the product, the operator model, really. So like in a more broad enterprise world, you'll have a team that's going to be responsible for the ITSM stack or capabilities. There'll be one for the monitoring, there'll be one for security, there'll be one for X, Y, Z, depending on how big the organization is. If you go down a route where you just, 70, 60% going as much as you can into the Microsoft stack, what does the operating model look like? Have you got a massive Microsoft team, or like how would you break up that discipline?
No, because you start looking at first of all we look at ITSM, right, and we look at educating the users, giving the users the ability, to fix their own problems. And with Copilot, it can do that. So it all depends on your user base. Like, I've worked with businesses that have got 300 users that have no IT team and they use managed services. I've worked with that have got 500 users and they've got a tech team of 40. I've worked in a travel company which had 2,500 users and there was only 5 of them, within the tech team. It all depends on what it looked like and the volume of the tickets, and volume of incidents that you're getting through. But you can self-resolve a lot of issues now with Microsoft. You can, like having portals to install their own apps, stopping tickets coming in to install apps.
Yeah.
Permission, but role-based access control, giving them permissions to install their own apps, giving them permission to install their own printers, fix basic issues. So it's all about education. When you're looking at how you build a team, we're going into the ITSM realm then, because you look at the volume of tickets you're coming in, you look at the volume of incidents you're coming in, and then you look at how can you self-resolve them incidents. How can you do that? And then you start looking at building your Microsoft team. With them, I firmly believe that I don't believe in first line, second line, third lines. I don't. I believe in a cross-functional team. You all help each other. You all muck in. That's my view. But you may have 2 security specialists in a team. You may have 2 power app specialists or power automate. Power platform specialists, as you could say. So it's about building a team to the need of the business and the growth of the basically growth of the staff count or the growth of the ticket count. We've always got to be trying to reduce them through self-resolution. So that is a really hard one to answer, because you don't grow a Microsoft estate based on your user count. You don't.
Mm-hmm. Maybe just go back, because I know we spoke briefly about that before, because you've essentially built these teams that you just referenced there and not having like a hierarchy. Maybe slightly off topic, but I think relevant for a more broader operating model conversation. You don't like the notion of having multiple levels, level 1, 2, 3, and instead of having a flat structure. Maybe just talk about that for a sec.
Yeah, so what I'd operate is a service desk. So I'd operate a service desk and then a project team. Or a project and BAU delivery team. That's how I like to operate it. You don't get the big IAMs. You don't get the people who think that they're too good to pick tickets up. It's all mucking in. It's all getting involved. Yes, you do have your seniors. You have your service desk team leaders. You have your project leaders. You have your senior project engineers. But you don't get none of that. I'm too good for that. I don't like. I operated as head of IT, right, in my last role. We had at one point we had no IT director, no CTO, so I reported straight into the CEO. I still fix tickets. I still went in there and mucked in with the lads, because I operate a work. You work with me, not for me. Mm-hmm. So I operate a flat structure in the service desk with a team leader, and then they report into a manager or myself. I don't believe in the first line, second line, third line, no matter how many users you've got, because yes, you should have seniors, but not labeling them first line, second and third line, because people are then too good to pick up tickets. And I've seen it many times that a third liner will not pick up a password reset when the first line are run off the feet and breaking SLAs, just because they're a third liner. I believe if they work on the service desk, their stats, their KPIs are all flat. They're all working to the same KPIs. And a third line is not as busy as a service desk engineer. They have longer tickets and longer issues, yeah. But service desk engineers, they're in the thick of it, and they're the ones that are They're the ones that give you the good feedback. They're the ones that get they're the ones that get the tech team praise. So I like to operate a flat structure to enable them to learn as well, to work with the people who have got knowledge, not separate the teams.
Interesting. I think so. Related to that, a common challenge that organisations I've worked with have is they have an incident, they think it's somewhere in their Microsoft Office 365 or Azure Stack or whatever. The first question that gets asked by Microsoft when they call for help is prove it's us and not something else in your environment. And I'm sure you've been on the receiving of this time and time again. So any tips for organizations that are faced with that on a pretty regular basis?
Buy your licensing off a good partner, because your partners have got CSP. Your partners have got CSP obligated support, so your partners have to support you before they send it to Microsoft. If they don't, you've not got a good partner.
Okay, interesting.
Hmm.
Didn't know that. CSP first. Okay.
Partners have got CSP obligated support to support you on a first line basis before they escalate to Microsoft. So if you've replicated the issue, your partner should have to replicate the issue before it goes to Microsoft. So then Microsoft are getting a ticket from a partner, not a customer. So they're getting partner level support, and it's been replicated on 2 occasions. So find yourself a good partner that will support you and not just fob you off. That's my answer to that question. That's why I've moved partners many a times, and that's why I only work with specific partners.
Interesting.
Yeah, cool. Okay, you talked earlier about some of the value that the Microsoft stack brings, particularly in terms of consolidation, right? So really, it's a really simple one. You can go in, you can save cost by taking out some more expensive tools because you've got 80% of what you need in your Microsoft contract that you're paying for anyway, right? What about the other side of providing value out of the Microsoft stack? And by that, I mean helping clients improve their revenue or take cost out of their environment, right? Because those are the 2 things that every business wants to do. Yeah, consolidation is an easy one, but what about more business kind of focused stuff? Like, we're a small retailer. We want to try and grow our revenues. How do you see the incredible amount of tools and technology that Microsoft have helping these organizations grow their revenue or perhaps automate and drive profit?
It's just through, in that instance, let's use retail for example, it will just be through reporting and data. So the utilization of let's say Microsoft Fabric these days is a fantastic tool, but exporting that data into dashboards, that are easily readable, so they can see the stats around the retail and grow the business that way, based on it is all database. When you're looking at growing revenue based on Microsoft tooling, it has to be data based, and how you can utilize that data. That's the only way to do it. If you look at contact centers, it all depends on the size of the contact center. I probably wouldn't even turn around and say use Teams for a contact center as a service. It can do it, but it's not going to increase your revenue. It's not. Whereas if you utilize a service like 8x8 or your Mitels or Avayas, the client journey on that is mapped from end to end, and you can increase your revenue by your customer retention and stopping your drop-off rates. So in that instance, increasing your revenue through customer service, I wouldn't say utilize Microsoft. I'd say utilize a true contact center as a service. Microsoft have dipped the toe into it. It can do it. It's not great, but it's good enough for a 5-user contact center, but it's not good enough for a 200-user contact center. And introducing CRMs, you've got to weigh up it. So when you go into CRM world, we're utilizing retail here. When you go into CRM world, you're looking at the Dynamics. The Dynamics Business Central can do a job, but it's restricted on licensing numbers. And then so you're looking at your Dynamics for sales, Dynamics customer service, Dynamics contact center. Microsoft at that point is very, very costly. Very costly.
Yeah.
There's tools out there that will be cheaper than Microsoft that consolidate it all. We partner with one, for example, Matt. Their tool will be cheaper than consolidating all their Microsoft tools together, and it will do exactly the same job.
Yeah.
So at that point, I'm saying don't go Microsoft. There's better tools out there. So when you start looking at revenue streams, it's hard to leverage the Microsoft tooling into that. Microsoft is there to BAU and to prevent additional cost. It's, in my opinion, it's very difficult to generate revenue through the Microsoft platform. It is.
Interesting. And you talked there about cost, right? One of the things, an area that's particularly hot at the moment is FinOps. And trying to drive costs down of cloud spend is number one on the FinOps list. It shouldn't be, but it clearly is. Really interesting to see Microsoft playing in this space. And I think the question that I've had is, and a lot of organizations seem to have, is using Microsoft's own tools to drive down your spend on Microsoft Cloud. Is that really it sounds like them shooting themselves in the foot.
You're clutching at straws there because you're looking at one of your biggest costs within the operation space, where you are looking at your biggest cost within the operation space, and you're trying to reduce it. When you start reducing costs that way, you've got to start licensing, stacking, and bending the way that you use Microsoft. There is ways to do it. By adding certain licenses to your feature set will open other features of the Microsoft stack. By having one license, it's something that it is bending the Microsoft stack. But it is possible, but you are clutching at straws at that point, and one day it will come around to bite you because that cost is going to come back. So for me, it's licensing stacking is great, but when you start trying to reduce cost by bending the way you use it, it's going to come around and bite you. But it is.
Yeah, interesting.
But there is ways to do it.
Absolutely. Need a good partner again, eh?
Or you need somebody who knows the Microsoft platform very well.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Is any if anybody's got any questions they want to pose to Dan, please stick them in the chat because we're getting to the point where we normally start to wrap up. Matt, have you got any more questions for Dan?
I suppose so as we come to the end, maybe we talk about the cost and licensing stuff now. I know, Dan, we've had some of these conversations in the background. Just general, let's say, I won't say precautions, but strategies to structure the licensing correctly. And if we look at it maybe from a user perspective versus other software at the moment, because I suppose we're a growing team, we're looking at the best ways to do it. We've spoke about different packages and bolt-ons and add this on, and do we pay for that? Do we not pay for that? Like maybe just like if there is a methodology or approach to go, okay, this is a sensible path to pursue.
Yeah, so back in the day, partners gave everybody E3 licensing. That was the norm. Just chucking E3 license at them, which is unneeded. Now partners are being a bit more honest, and they're giving they're leveraging your business premium licensing, your business standard licensing, which are restricted at 300. So, but you can have multiple 300s within that licensing stack. So when I go into a business, what I do is I do your user profiling. So I look at whether we've got a desktop user who need applications, whether we've got frontline users, power users, VIPs, and obviously tech users. And I look at their responsibilities and what they actually need to do their job. At that point, what I can look at is I can look at the right Microsoft licensing structure. So if you're a frontline worker, we can look at giving you business standard and bolting on an Exchange Plan 2 license, so you've got your 50 gig mailbox. It will reduce if you give them a business premium licensing, which is £16 something, by doing a business standard and bolting on an Exchange Plan 2, it drops it down to a tenner, but they're a frontline user, so they don't need the applications. They might be a BYOD user, so they don't need data on their actual devices. So you use at that point, you've user profiled what their requirements are, what they need, and how they utilize your business data, and you build the license stack for them. So at that point, you may have a 600 user business, but you can still utilize 300 of them might be frontline workers, 300 of them back office. You can still use a business suite before you enter the enterprise suite. So it's all about user profiling, building user requirements, and then building the licensing stack that they need to do their job. And that's where licensing stacking comes in play.
And I suppose like that just makes sense when we're looking at tools anyway. We're normally driving the right requirements. So let's talk about the user profiling thing just for a second then. So we've obviously been speaking, I know like some of the approach, but if someone's just going to grab themselves now and start understanding like user profiling, how are they building this profile if they were to do it themselves? And then when they do get it, what do they do with it if they were to do it with themselves? Like what's the art of the possible for an individual just going, you know what, we want to make some savings here?
So it's really hard without knowing what you're doing. It's damn near impossible. So I've learned from a good partner how to do it. So, but these are the questions you should be asking your partners. Why are we utilizing this licensing? Why are we doing this? Why are we doing that? Why have all of our users got business premium when some of them are BYOD users?
Yeah.
We're allowing our data to go onto their device. We have no control over that data. You can do, but a lot of people, they may not have the knowledge on how to control that data. So these are the questions you've got to be asking your partners. If you're not happy with your partner as well, you can move partners mid-term contract. Microsoft will allow it. Partners don't advertise it, but if you don't feel that you're with the right partner, you can move mid-term. Even if you've got a signed contract for your Microsoft 365 licensing, you can turn around and say, I'm not happy with you, and move partner. They have to support it, but Microsoft will not tie you into a single partner for that contract. Your contract is with Microsoft, not them.
Yeah.
So you should be asking your partners these questions. Is my license optimal? Doing license optimization reports, which are built into Microsoft reporting suite, looking at Microsoft usage reports. Are my users, let's say you give it a big one's Visio and MS Projects. People say, oh, I want it. But MS Projects is £30 a month. Visio's 717, something like that. You can't quote me on these figures. I am picking them at the edge.
No, you mean because I've been looking at some of those myself. It stacks up super quick. It's like, do we even bother doing that?
But as an admin, you should be looking at utilization reports and seeing how often are these users utilizing Visio? If they're using it once a month, well, do you actually need it?
Yeah.
If they've got Teams, like say they've got a Teams call package, but they're not actually utilizing the phone, to call out. Well, why are we paying that £15 a month for you to utilize that when you don't actually use it?
Yeah.
So it's all about looking at the utilization reports with Microsoft, which your partner should be helping you do. On your quarter reviews, they should be saying to you, this is how you can optimize your Microsoft environment. This is how you can utilize it better. And that's another way of making sure you're protecting your business and you're exploiting Microsoft services, because they're giving you the reports to do all this. They're giving the utilization reports to do all this, to see where your users are utilizing their time, what apps they're using. So at that point, you can start stripping. That's where you build your user profiles on what they actually need and strip it back if they don't actually need it.
Yeah. One on the usage, you made about the frontline workers then in BYOD and not using the client apps. And I know you do yourself primarily use the Microsoft Suite pretty much inside of Teams rather than going outside of Teams. Like some pros and cons there?
Pros are that I've got a single point. I'm not using multiple apps. I'm using Teams for everything. So I've got my Teams channels. I've got my MS. So when I'm working with our clients, I give them a Teams channel. Within that Teams channel, they'll have a mode of contacting me. They'll have their project plan. They'll have any updates. So they've only got one place to go. They're not utilizing multiple apps. So they're not looking at you're not utilizing. I've got 4 screens here, but they're not utilizing all these windows. They've got a single pane of glass, which is reducing the clicks, reducing the time, and making people's lives easier. And again, I'm going back to cost. Time is money.
Yeah.
So if you're making somebody's life easier, reducing the clicks by putting everything in one single place, then they're going to actually, I should hope they're happy. But the users at the end of the day, they're never happy with change.
Or you're on?
I am. Yeah. My dogs were barking in the background, so I had to go on mute for a second there, as always. But wonderful. Right, Dan, thank you so much for joining us today. I think
thank
to
you.
sum up, the biggest takeaway I've got from today, or two things. One is make sure you're with the right Microsoft partner. I'm sure Dan might be able to help you with that if you're looking for somebody. But the other one really was, something that we've said time and time again on this podcast is you don't need 100% of all the functionality of 300 different tools you've got out there. Exploit the contracts that you've got. In your case, the Microsoft, this case, the Microsoft contract, and that gives you gives you a phrase I used was one throat to choke when something goes wrong, right? But less clicks, it's less time. If everybody's in the Microsoft framework or a single vendor tool, I saw something from Gartner recently that said, a single vendor strategies give you a 40% better chance of meeting your SLAs to the business. And I really think that's true, having worked with so many companies that have so many different tools, and it really does make life simpler. So Dan, if people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
LinkedIn. Just drop me a message, drop my business page a message. I'm more than happy to help any questions. I'm more than happy to the licensing structure that I spoke about a moment ago. I'll share that with people. But yeah, if anybody's got any questions, just reach out. But one thing you've got to think about though is when you're looking at investing everything into Microsoft, you have got a single point of failure. I will not run away from that. You have tendency failure, risk. The risk of it happening is very minimal, but you have to weigh that cost up. So if you invest if you put all your enterprise tooling into Microsoft, you do have that single risk. That does have to go on your risk register. If businesses do have risk registers, because I do find these days that they still don't have risk registers.
One super last question. Sorry to go off track a bit. Mentioned about the Google stack before. What do you generally see? Is there a number, a percentage of people you see go, actually, we're done with Microsoft, we're going to Google, or Google's not good enough, we're going to go to Microsoft? Last question.
Trendy startups go to Google.
Yeah.
People that are used to, people that have worked in businesses for many years, and they'll go Microsoft because that's their bread and butter.
Yeah.
But I see trend. I don't mean it is offensive, but trendy startups, Mac users, young entrepreneurs, go Google. That's how I see it. And it is growing. It is growing rapidly.
Good. Yeah. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us again, Dan. Matt, what's next on the podcast?
Right. So we have, through some admin error, we have 2 slots booked for June instead of one of them what was going to be May. One is going to be towards the beginning, and that will be with Matt Knight from the MOJ. I think that's the beginning.
Excellent.
And that'll be talking about essentially insourcing your service management tooling team, from going from large outsourcing footprint to reducing it down, and how to still maintain good service. And then I think later on in that month, we are meeting with Chris Cooper, who is ex-CISO from Capgemini, all about securing your estate at an enterprise level. We may have one person coming in for May. I won't say their name just yet, but they're an ITSM specialist, and the general topic of conversation will be more around, I kind of use the phrase, humanizing IT, so making it more people-centric. So ITSM specialist, but more around the user experience of the people in those processes. That will likely take place somewhere in May if we confirm it. One other thing to mention.
Do they call it ITXM now? Do they call it ITXM now?
XLS, that is the user experience. Yeah. There is one more important thing to mention. So we very much want to expand on trying to actually collaborate on the podcast. So rather than just be one way and we do the videos and the chat channel and things like that, We have just finished creating a LinkedIn group now, and the difference between the group versus the page we've got now is people can join there and better collaborate, post content, share ideas. So we've got that formed now. I will put a post out separately for that. I'll probably put it into this page as well. But if you look around on LinkedIn for of the same name, but community and collaboration, it's a private group, so we're not going to let loads of people in there unnecessarily, but feel free to jump into that group. And then we'll be turning this forum into a more collaborative forum, because our aspiration for this year, if we get to this point, is we'd like to run our first live event where we'll probably invite some of the previous people that have been on. We'll try and make it a bit more user interactive, perhaps, but we'll be arranging that with some feedback from the people in the LinkedIn group, which is there now. We just haven't made it public, so feel free to find it and add yourselves. And then I'll also put a separate post out shortly.
Superb. Right. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching today. Really appreciate it. And thanks again, Dan, for coming on. Really appreciate it. And we will see you all soon. Take care.
See you in a bit. Ah.